Welcome to Speculative Sandbox, your audio playground for creative storytellers. My name is Vicky Lon, and in each episode, I and a guest will unpack a trope with an eye for world building, character development, or narrative structures. You can also join the conversation on TikTok and Instagram. For those times when the real world just doesn't cut it, let's get lost in a fictional one. Okay, JD, which circumstance sees you at your most authentic? When you stub your toe really bad and it hurts? Or when you receive recognition for your work at your job?
Oh, when I stub my toe, in terms of being authentic and showing who I am and my real, there are no filters when you stub your toe. And I will speak in Spanish and go like puñeta, and so on and so forth.
Okay, all right. Well, that's fair. I was trying to think of like two extreme, like polar opposites, where if a stranger saw you at different times, they would have a different impression of you.
They would still get an authentic version of me, but I think that pain has a way of bringing out the purest of us, just because you're not prepared for it, and because it shows, at least in my case, that I am mercurial and passionate and have energy and can be very loud. People go like, "Oh, you're always so positive and etc." It's like, yeah, but stub your toe and see see how positive and soothing you are.
All right, that's fair. Well, JD Estrada, thank you so much for joining me today. How about you introduce yourself to our listeners? Tell everyone what you're working on, what your latest projects are.
So, greetings, fellow humans. My name is JD Estrada. Hopefully your new favorite Puerto Rican indie author, although I'm also half Cuban. I have 22 books out. I published a novel in March, and I finally finished the Human Cycle trilogy. I know it's a cliche to go with a trilogy, but that's how it was going to be 4 books. And then while I'm writing, the books were like, no, it's going to be 3 books. And I'm like, dude, but it's a cliche. And it's like, it's going to be 3 books. And I'm like, you're the boss. I'm just the
Yeah.
guy typing and writing stuff.
Yeah.
In terms of what I'm working on, I'm outlining 3 novels because why keep things simple? And I'm also working on a speculative fiction short story collection. And that one's fun just because when I do a collection, I like to explore range.
Okay.
And there are some very different short stories in that collection, and I'm enjoying myself. And again, even with the outlining, when outlining's fun, it's like, okay, this is gonna be fun.
Yeah. Well, I'm very impressed by the sheer volume and drive that you have. I wish I could borrow a little bit of that. I'm happy I finally got a story that I'm working on, and I'm working on it very, very slowly because life, but I'm just happy I have it and I'll take it.
No, take it, run with it. But I haven't been writing much since March,
Okay.
because I got burnt out from just finishing the thing. Then I went to the Puerto Rico Comic Con. Then when I came back from that blitz, my day job was like, "Hey, buddy, we need you, and
Oh,
we don't need you just for one project. We need you for like 4 projects." So that freight train of madness lasted until about 2 weeks ago.
okay. So now you can breathe. Do you feel the inspiration creeping in yet or not
I,
yet?
I I felt the inspiration of the things that I'm getting. I When I go for a walk, I get an idea. When something happens, I get an idea. And the problem is that when you have 3 outlines that you're working on, you get ideas for all 3. I gotta get back on the horse and say, I'm gonna focus on this one.
Hmm. Do you ever find yourself having an idea, you flush it out and you go, cool, cool idea. And then you go, but maybe I don't want to tell it, or maybe it's not my idea to tell, or it just not it does like if I had to look at my future body of work, I don't think I want this in it.
I still haven't had to cut something like that. What I have done is write a full short story, share it with beta readers, get the feedback, and go, okay, I have to literally write it again from scratch. And that actually happened in my Spanish horror, dark fantasy, dark fiction collection. It's called Penumbra. There's a short story that I wrote, and I was like, "Oh, it's awesome!" And then the feedback from people is like, I kind of don't get it." And I saw people's feedback, and I was like, "Ah!" And then I had this aha moment where I just had to change the POV. I literally had to. So I told it from this perspective. It wasn't working, and I was like, okay, this is not the person that's going to be telling the story. This is the person
Ah,
that's going to be telling the story. And once I started writing, everything just fell into place. And when I finished it, I was like, ooh, that's way better, and that's more unique, and that's more different. So from the ashes of a failure. So that's normally what happens with me in terms of projects. I can say that some of my projects haven't sold, but I'm still proud of them. I'm still proud of all my book babies, even the ones that have sold in the single digits. When I go to a convention, some it's like they just see the cover and people, it's like, here's my money.
hmm
With
That
others,
cover it does magic.
oh, a cover does magic, intensely. And I've been very fortunate to work with some very talented artists, a lot from Puerto Rico, but I also worked from stateside. I worked with two. Actually, can show their work. This is actually a middle grade, and we can get into this a bit more. Middle grade. This cover,
That's beautiful. Oh, wow.
the back cover has actually helped me sell some of these copies. This cover was by Rafael Tangal. He's an artist who is based in Brooklyn, New York. He is of Filipino descent. He is one of the nicest guys that you're gonna find. Super talented. He is the son of a comic book artist. His dad's name escapes me, but I don't want to put any focus on his dad. He is the talent. And he was. This is when I got the layout. I had one note, two notes: add a door and change the color of the house to something to have more contrast. That's it. So I did that. There's another one. It's over there, and I'm not gonna hop off the screen. An artist. I think she's in Philadelphia or Pennsylvania. Well, Pennsylvania is Philadelphia. Her name is Melissa Lettuce, and she was brilliant in just helping me come up with a cover. I had no idea, and she guided me. And then this one, I just couldn't let go of the image. This is the Spanish horror short story collection, Penum,
Ooh.
Penumbra. So I had this image of that shell in the moon, and then I wanted something emblematic of Puerto Rico. If you ever visit to Puerto Rico, to Old San Juan and other places, you're gonna see that. That is called a garita, which is like a lookout spot for soldiers in the olden times. So I work with people and we get to great covers, and those covers they sell the book by themselves. And then the other projects, it's like I'm like, wow, no one's gonna like it, and you never give up on a project, and then someone you get a message, it's like, dude, did you write this? And it's like, yes, I did, and I love that book, and I'm like, you don't know how much I needed to hear that.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, and I love that you shared with us your covers. And for those that want to see
Mm.
the video version, check us out on YouTube and Spotify. I feel like I think a lot of people understand and recognize the power of a really good cover. And then I know that there's some writers that are like, I just want to get my book out there. It's the power of my words. And they kind of throw together something real quick and easy. And then that it could actually hurt them because the cover just draws so much attention. What is your advice for writers when working with designers to make sure that their vision, because I know that's where a lot of writers can feel a little bit trapped, like the ideas in their head and they're kind of scared to release it on like have someone else take control of it. So how do you work with designers so they capture your vision?
Okay, so I participated in the Author Tube Writer Conference, and I actually gave a 1 hour presentation on creative briefs. I come from an advertising background, and when you're going to work with the designers or a creative team, you have a creative brief that gives you the points that you have to hit on.
Hmm.
And I wanted to do that presentation to show the difference between what I did for the Daydreams on the Sherbet Shore, which is the cover that Melissa Lettuce worked on, and that's a middle grade project, and what Carelis Luna, which is the Puerto Rican designer who did the cover for Penumbra. Two very different approaches because for Penumbra, I just couldn't get the image out of my head. I gave her, and also I chose each one for each of those projects because of their strengths as a designer. You have to see a portfolio and you have to go like, this gives me an idea of something that we can do with Carelis. I think that her use of shadows and lighting, how she photo manipulates and how she uses Photoshop in general. I think she's really good. And I'm saying this objectively. I've known her for years, but I've always been a fan of her work. And I was like, I have to work with her. And I already had a really clear vision of what I wanted. And so it was a very direct, clear, concise conversation. With Melissa, I was extremely fortunate because she was willing to read the thing, to toss out ideas, to give me ideas of what we could do, and then adjust accordingly. So the process was a lot more granular, a lot slower. And it's just being honest with a designer, which is something that not everyone feels comfortable with. I'm the first one to tell you that if I don't know exactly what I want, I will say, help me so that I can get a direction. But when I know what I want, I know what I want. And when someone does not hit the points that I need or meets the criteria, I give them one or two opportunities to try to adjust. And if I see that it's not flowing for X or Y, one thing is having a challenge in communication. That happens. We're humans. Language in itself is flawed. So I can understand us having to have that conversation, but seeing someone that's trying stuff that just feels off, I've had that situation, and I've said, man, thanks for your time, but let's leave it at this. On one occasion, they had tried two layouts. I paid them for their time. And another one, we hadn't even formalized that, and it just fell off. And I was like, I'd like to explore my options with something else, but we're still friends, and
Mm.
we are still friends.
That's
And
smart. I think a lot of people feel caught in that moment.
it's there's a lot of people that feel obligated that they have to, if they have an initial conversation with someone, that they have to finish the project. No, this is my money, this is my money, this is my project, this is my brand. And for me, every cover is important. Also, don't half-ass it. If it's something that you don't have the budget, I totally get that, and I totally understand that. And I don't always have the budget. And some projects I go like, that project might not sell as much. So I try to switch gears and try to get creative. My wife actually helped me with a cover. I'm going to describe it a bit. This is 2020. So you see that there's one word 20 in one lens, 20 in the other lens. There's a glasses, and it looks like an eye chart. And
Mm.
even the side, it's going to look like an eye chart. That's the concept. And my wife helped me do that one. And it's something that we were able to do on Canva on a budget. Did it take time? Yes. Did we have to tweak and did we have to do it? Yes. But we were able to do it. Also, I was able to do one for the Rhymes from the Wicked Nursery. People love this cover, and that's actually a stock picture that I was able to find, but it took hours.
Mm-hmm.
People want a quick solution and they want to do things quickly because
It's a lot.
people
It's a lot
don't.
of it's just one step in many steps when you're doing this.
No, but beyond that, we've been spoiled by technology. I remember having to wait for the radio to play the song that I wanted to hear or watch MTV until the video came up. Right now, you just pull up your phone and you can pretty much find anything that you remember. That's insane.
Mhm.
It's wonderful, but people don't want to put in the time. Plus, they don't want to put in the money, and a lot of people go with AI generation, and I have my issues with that, and I prefer to work with people that don't use AI, and that's a different conversation. But what I'm saying is that all this took time. The font that I use for Rhymes from the Wicked Nursery, if you see the original font, the way that it's displayed, this sentence, these phrases, it is absolutely horrendous. I had to go letter by letter, adjusting everything until it looked right. And it's the difference between spending 3.5 hours on something and wanting to have a
Mhm.
solution in 10 minutes, and you saying, let's give it the 10 minutes. And sometimes you need the 10 minutes for a cover design. Sometimes you need 10 minutes to think about something. And people
Mhm.
just want it now, 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 now. And I have to do. And if I don't hit my word count, and it's not all about word count, it's about the end product. People are not interested in learning or seeing the process of making sausage most times. Sometimes we're morbid and we want to see how complicated and how destructive it was. But most times people just want the sausage. They want the end product. They want it they want to see the highlights and they want it to see beautiful. So that is what you have to focus on. What it takes to get to that end product is whatever it takes.
Mhm.
Um, just go for it.
Well, JD, thank you so much for that insight. Coming from an expert too in marketing, that was awesome. So, switching gears, we are talking about authenticity in writing today. And I guess the first question I want to ask you is, what does authentic writing look like?
It's what does love look like?
Ooh, okay.
Everyone's going to have a different definition, and how you define authenticity, that's up to you. And my experience is that eventually an audience is going to respond to what you put out, whether it's authentic or not. For me, authenticity is very important in everything I do, from the characters that I include in my stories, from the stories and the plots and the story arcs, from the dialogue, from the covers, everything. I want it to feel like something you can't find anywhere else. And for me, that's super important. I'm not saying that people that write inauthentically can't achieve this. I'm saying that for me, it's easier just because I look at my characters and I go like, okay, I've never seen anyone say something like that particularly,
Okay.
or have the reactions that they have, or just base things off experience. They say, right, what you know. What do you know better than the mistakes that still haunt you? Be an alchemist and use a negative to and make it into a positive. Every time that something horrendous happens, I go like, okay, how am I going to use this in a story, just so that I can change the mindset and be emotionally healthy about it.
Yeah,
Um,
turning lemons into lemonade, essentially.
yeah, but there are many ways to detect inauthenticity.
Okay.
First off is just check what people post and what they say and how they treat people and etc. And if there's a disconnect, you're going to eventually find it. I've been extremely fortunate to connect with a lot of people that are extremely authentic, and I gravitate towards them. Some of them are well bred and have dozens or even hundreds of reviews, and others have a handful of reviews. I love both for different reasons. But what I love the same about each is that they are authentic, and I can give you examples of so many indie authors that I respond to, and by connecting with and having conversations and having friendships with indie people, you will find authentic people that go like, you know what, even if I can't buy a yacht, I need to write this. And when you see someone that they say that, I need to write this. I couldn't let this story go. That's when glimpses of authenticity come forth.
Hmm.
Writing a poem that is disarming and it is tragic and it is sad, but it is beautiful. And then you ask the person, is this from real life? And they go like, unfortunately, yes. And I'm like, first off, this is amazing. Second off, I'm proud of you that you shared this, and I'm also grateful. And when you say that to someone that they're not expecting it, or because a lot of people don't give them the attention or the time of day for whatever reason, because you read them and you go like, man, this is excellent. And then you see some other New York Times bestsellers, which is another BS topic. But you see other bestsellers and you go like, why is that selling? Um, it sometimes it sells because it's trendy and someone made a TikTok video. Eventually, I hope that someone does a TikTok video on one of my books and does one of my books, and then another one of
The
my books.
dancing.
The dancing, and they do a JD Estrada dance. This is an invitation for anyone. If you want to do a JD Estrada dance, by all means, do not consult me because I will not give you any pointers, but I will root for you and I will share
Yeah, you'll
share
share
that
it.
video and I will
You'll
pimp
stitch
you out.
it.
But it's that, and sometimes you read a story that you go like, I've never read anything like that. And I like when that happens. The problem is that something like that doesn't always sell.
Yeah. Well, what I'm hearing from you is uh, basically there's an exchange happening, right? Between the writer writing a story down and the
Mhm,
reader consuming the story and the
mhm,
feeling that you get when you are so I also read books where it was very largely popular, but then I felt like I was as a reader just moving through the paces, plot followed by plot, event followed by event, and you just kind of like, and but then you read other stories that feel so ingrained, like they capture all the feelings. Now you feel like you're in there too, and it heightens the experience. Um, I remember, okay, so when you talk about identifying inauthenticity, I remember finding a notebook or a binder of stories I wrote when I was in elementary school. For some reason, when in elementary school, I wanted all my characters to be 16 years old. That was just the best age. So I'm writing all these stories about 16-year-olds in high school and now being way older than 16, but having lived 16, I read it and I'm just like, girl, you had no idea what you were talking about. You know what I mean? Like, that's not how you think. That's not what and it was a great writing exercise, of course. Like, you should do an experiment and stuff like that. But there is something to be said about when you do capture the authentic side of your story, that the connection can be so much stronger with the reader.
One of the best compliments that I've ever gotten that absolutely disarmed me, I've said this story before, but I mention it often just because it's unusual. So most people know me because of the human cycle or the middle grade that I shared, or the Puerto Rican short stories, or even the Wicked Nursery rhymes. But not everyone knows me for specific poetry collections that I've released. And there's the shortest one that I released was about, I don't know, 30, 40 pages, if that. But I said I wanted to do something really short, but I wanted to challenge myself. In this collection, there's a poem that is the most complicated thing that I've written. It's 72, no, 72 lines. I forget. No, I forget. It was 9 lines to a stanza, and the rhyme scheme is abacadabra for each stanza. Jesus, Lord, and it's a narrative poem. And I was like, oh, this is awesome, etc. And then there's like horror haikus, and you can read them in any order in one page. And I was also very proud of that. And then someone comes up and says, man, the box. And I go like, yeah, that poem is after my dad passed away. It was just a really weird feeling because people that I don't know were like, oh, I feel so much your loss. And I was like, do you? Are you? I was having all of those conflicting emotions, and then I just wrote that poem of how I was feeling and how I was processing the loss in that moment. And she was like, yeah, that's the first time that I was able to understand what I felt like when dad passed away. She
Mm.
said this in a public setting, and I'm like trying not to choke up and just
Yeah,
I
that
had I,
connection was made
no,
between you and the reader.
and they read that, and when they asked the question and they saw the answer, because if you ask me a question, I will shutting me up is hard. But I will always be straight with my answers. And I said that answer, and she was like, "That's exactly how I felt." And we later on we were able to unpack that a bit more.
Mhm. I like that you bring up
And
poetry and writing, because writing long form poetry is shorter than like storytelling. Because to be authentic doesn't necessarily mean more words.
no,
It can actually capture something very succinctly and still have that authentic feeling of
and
capturing.
and something can be authentic and be popular and not necessarily resonate with you. And I'm not saying that it's good or bad. I'm saying that it doesn't have to connect with you. I recently read Milk and Honey by Rupi um, Kapoor. I'm butchering the name, but I read it and I could see the value in the poetry and how that poetry collection read by someone else in the right time can be instrumental in their healing process. But I'm a guy in my 40s, and although some poems are completely disarming and beautiful and really heartfelt, there are some pages that it's like 3 lines, and I go like, is that a poem?
Mm.
And I had that trepidation. And again, I've read poetry that is so disarming and so honest and so intense, but so well made. Another poet that's small press or indie, her name is Kristen Garth. She specializes in sonnets. Writing a sonnet is not particularly easy, and she's extremely good at it. And it's not that she's been good at it in one collection. She's been good at it, Lord, for years and for several collections. And again, you read it and you go like, no one else could have written that.
Yeah.
And for me, when I read something that is that powerful, but at the same time you go like, this can connect with other people, that's when I know I found something special. And then there's other things that are popular just because they're popular. um They have their place. There are popcorn movies that are popular. Independence Day. Is Independence Day the best movie ever in the world? No. Is it memorable? It has its memorable moments. We got saved by a Dell laptop. Um,
Well,
it's one of the few contexts where I can still watch Will Smith and not cringe.
well, I mean, even
Um,
though it's not a realistic and maybe not, you can't, the people who made it can't speak from experience, but there's very authentic pockets of things that happen in there, right? Humor
100%.
through difficult times, you know? And so like I guess that kind of segues into my next question, which is, okay, let's pretend you're writing a scene that you have not experienced. You are in a getaway car and you're going to drive off a cliff. The cliff is coming and you need to get out of the car. How do you write that authentically? Clearly, you haven't
Well,
done that. I'm
well,
assuming.
clearly I haven't fallen off a cliff, but clearly I have been in a car that was speeding, and I know what that sensation feels like, or what when I've been in a roller coaster that's a bit higher than my threshold.
Mm-hmm.
So you focused on, for me, I would focus on what is visceral in that experience. So the difference between a roller coaster and an amusement park, because if it's in a fair, it's similar to being chased in a car and just as dangerous, or maybe more dangerous. You would focus on that feeling where you can't even latch onto one complete thought.
Mm-hmm.
So that feeling of being desperate and trying to calm down, everything's going to be okay, but you don't know if it's going to be okay, and then you pass by something like way too close, or if you've almost been in a car crash, and I've almost been in several car crashes, or I've seen car crashes. um
Yeah. That
just
dread,
see
that sudden like fear, the heart, you know what I mean? The heat, the
it,
lightheadedness, all the different things.
all of those things. And I've been directly behind a car that got crashed between two people that I know. We were gonna meet up in one place, and I'm driving because someone had too much to drink, and I was a designated driver, and I'm driving, and suddenly I see my friend who's in the car ahead of us just get plowed by another car, and I'm like, oh God, no.
Oh, wow.
So so I would tap into that experience, like that oh God no experience. Uh, I was driving at a normal speed, but everything that I saw was at the same time in fast forward and slow motion,
Oh, wow.
which is it's just a bizarre experience. You have to see something that intense and fear for the life of someone that you care about to
Mm-hmm.
have fast forward and slow motion at the same time. It was bizarre. And then as a writer, I also focus on, okay, so what was my physical reaction? What stood out? And when I have that type of experience, audio goes almost mute. It's not just movies that do that, that you see that when they go, that's my experience. My experience when I have something like that, you take the audio and you dial it way down. And then I focus on what I'm feeling tactilely, maybe something that I'm smelling. On certain occasions, certain memories trigger that, and definitely I become hyper aware of everything and what I'm seeing. So I can remember that car crash. I remember exactly the trajectory that they hit and where each of the cars ended up in. I know where there was glass. I know where there wasn't glass. I know that the right front tire of one of my friends, his car, it got totaled and the radiator got busted and it was leaking. And the other guy, it was the left tire. And I can kind of remember it because of logic, but I also remember how it looked like and how it smelled like. It was
Mm-hmm.
here, smelling all those chemicals. So I take all those visual experiences and I go like, okay, if I'm afraid of this happening and this hasn't happened, or I'm foretelling, how would that chase scene play out? That's one experience. And the other thing is that when I was a kid, my dad drove way too fast, so that almost felt like a
Oh,
like a car chase scene.
the
So I could also,
powerlessness, the helplessness of when something's happening out of your control
yeah.
at a high
So
speed.
I've been in a car that was going 120,
Whoa. Um,
and I had to go, Dad. So, and he's
uh,
like, what? And I'm like, 120.
that's scary. Wow, he sure likes to speed. Okay, so when it comes to the market, let's talk about the market. I'm going to dabble a little bit in the traditional quickly. I'm not traditionally published, but I am currently in submissions in my publisher inboxes right now. I've been getting feedback. And one thing I can speak to is that as publishers are looking for books to acquire, authenticity is definitely something they're focusing on. And it comes through in a couple different ways. So I wrote a book that is very like satirical sci-fi, but the heart of the book is about a mother-daughter relationship. And that's the part that they hook onto really hard. Because for them, the rest of the world and the magnificent world building, it's like those are all nice, but there's always got to be some sort of relationship or relatability, authenticity that grounds it all down, brings it to the ground. So even though you're up in space, the feelings are relatable to us here on Earth. And so, and I know in the indie world, you don't have to deal with the editors telling you, what they expect, right? You have a lot more freedom to publish your books, and you're working directly with your consumers. Depending on what the market wants, let's say in the next year, we all want zombie movies. I mean, we do, but we already do. Okay, let's do something else. Plant people. Suddenly, plant people become very popular. And we're like, God, I've never met a plant person. I don't know anything about plant people. But that's what they want. So I want to dive in there. All the agents are asking for plant people. How can you put authenticity into that?
You, again, coming from a background in advertising,
Mhm.
I've had to play around in some really small boxes.
Okay.
Um, and the way that you can have fun with it and make it your own, that's your life experiences, the people that you've met and the characters that you can make a plant person whatever you want. Okay,
Hmm.
being from Puerto Rico, so what plants are native to Puerto Rico? I'm also half Cuban. What plants are indigenous to Cuba? Do I want to play with that combination of who I am? Right now, I live in Atlanta. What are the plants that I can access here? And if they want plant people, it's not give them the plant people that already exist. Play with that concept. It's a concept. The concept is plant people. What can you do with plant people that's going to stand out from the rest and not just be part of the bookshelf?
Hmm.
And when you invite yourself to have fun, that's when things can get interesting
Hmm.
because animals and plants are endlessly more honest than humans. Humans have brains and hearts that get in the way. Um, Out of everything in our system, the most honest things are the ways that we have to dispose of waste and our stomach. So the digestive system, there it doesn't get more honest than that. When you have something that you like, you really like it, and it's even if it's bad for you, you really like it. You might have spikes in insulin or your cholesterol or your whatever, but something in you goes like, I like that.
Hmm.
Yes, that also has to do with your brain and whatnot, but um look at it, experience it. Okay, so they want plant people. Okay, what if the plant people are conscious because AI somehow combined with plant DNA? That's one idea. What if a plant got possessed by the spirit of someone?
Hmm.
That's another idea. What if you want to bring dryads and naiads into a modern setting? That's another idea. What if you want the offspring of Treebeard to have
Hmm.
migrated from wherever Middle Earth is, and somehow a spore of Treebeard landed on the planet, and it's been exposed to reality TV. This is me spitballing and giving you ideas, and you just play around with ideas until you find something that resonates. I never write to market because eventually the market is going to change its mind, and my experience is that by the time I'm done with my book, people have moved on. So I'd rather write what really drives me and what really fascinates me and what I just can't let go, but I have written for anthologies. So when you write for an anthology, you're technically writing for a market. You have a small market, which is the publisher of that anthology that has to read your story and say, this is good enough to include. So,
Hmm.
um, again, just some people see it as a bad thing. It's your job to look at it as a fun thing. And if you make it fun and you make it your own, you're winning on so many levels.
Well, and I think a fun way to look at it too is what do these plant people represent? And as you were talking, I was thinking about Little Shop of Horrors. Are you familiar with
Ooh,
that? Okay.
Audrey.
Yes, Feed Me Seymour. Um, yeah, so for those that don't know, it's a play that became a movie, and it's about a man who stumbles upon this alien plant that kind of came down on Earth during the total eclipse of the sun. I was in a high school play production of this. That's why I'm remembering it so vividly.
What did you play?
I was a freshman at the time, so I was like a little thing. So we were just the singers in the background. So anyway, he gets this man-eating plant. It's like a little Venus flytrap kind of plant, bigger than that with lips, and it needs to be fed blood. And so what happens is the main character feeds him his own blood, like a pricked finger, and then eventually it escalates as it gets larger. He starts feeding him full-on bodies. And when you look at that symbolically, right, it's not just a plant that like a literal plant eating people. It's like you can think of it as how your work is consuming you to the point where you're sacrificing your relationships with the people that you love. You know what I mean? Of course, it's not explicit, but and you can interpret it any which way you want. But if you really look into like the fear you have that your work kind of holds over you, especially if you work for a job that you hate or you have a boss that scares you, you know, whatever that may be, and just kind of project that onto plant people or dirt people or whatever, you know, is going to be famous. Watch, we're going to make plant people happen. Okay. That's going to start here.
Yeah, it can.
But, you know, like that could be a way to, even though you've never experienced it, but the authenticity can be found through whatever symbolism works for you.
And if you read mythology and if you go to a museum, eventually you're going to stumble on something that you go like, wait a minute. And something that is always fascinating to me is just connecting random stuff. And I've been able to connect elements that I saw on my trip to Chicago with stuff that I read in a comic book, with something that I heard in a song, and something that I saw in a movie, and a dream that I had, and so on and so forth. And it's just so weird that you can't replicate it.
Hmm.
And then when you take 3 steps back, you go like, that still kind of makes sense. I like it.
I feel like we can't have a conversation about authenticity without bringing up a very hot topic, a very controversial topic, one where we might just affirm what we've been hearing by other writers and authors and agents is artificial intelligence. And in fact, you mentioned it already in the context of brainstorming, but authenticity, can authenticity be captured by artificial intelligence?
Uh, a facsimile of authenticity can be captured via AI if you give it the right prompts and you refine it enough. But the thing is that you end up, your writing process becomes prompts. And I'm like, is that fun? Is that
Mhm.
gratifying? Is that part of who you are? And some people want to glorify it and romanticize it like, oh, I am Dr. Frankenstein and I'm coming up with the best prompts so that I can get the best text. And it's like, dude, you know, there's basic things that you have to write. And my concern is that, okay, so I work in advertising and I've been exposed to AI text coming from different directions. And
Mhm.
how do I know it's AI? First off, there's software to detect it. And second off, if you're working on a translation and something doesn't make sense and you back translate it and suddenly it does make sense, you go, ah, I see what you did there. Um, I don't know. My concern with I write by hand,
Mhm.
so that pretty much is gonna tell you
Yeah.
most of what you need to
Where
know in
you, yeah.
terms of my opinion to AI.
Yeah.
Um,
And I'm taking forever to write one chapter. So like,
and
it's,
it's,
and where
but
I stand.
no, my experience with writing is that often, do you know how they transport logs down a river? They
They
literally
don't, they don't just dump it in the if a
they
log
don't.
is going down a river, it's not just in the water.
Yeah, but it's in the water, but they send hundreds of logs, and sometimes there's a jam.
Okay.
There's a person whose job is to identify the key log, and the key log is the log that's holding everything up. Literally, you jiggle that log and you take it out of the equation, and everything starts flowing again. So for me, writing often when you come into those situations, there's a dam, and sometimes it's one word that you have to put in or take out, and suddenly everything flows. That's my experience. I'm not saying that's the experience of everyone. I'm saying that if you look at it that way,
With
And
your own creative process, you mean?
it's finding your own creative process and coming up with creative solutions, because sometimes you need a creative solution. Sometimes I had to do the whole crepe approach and do normally when you cook crepes, the first or second one are just absolute garbage and you have to toss until you
Hmm.
regulate the temperature of the pan. So the first or second version of the story or paragraph or stanza or line or something might be garbage, but it's going to help you regulate.
Mm.
And
You
it's
need to
just not,
experience that.
you need to experience it. You need to experiment. You need to embrace the process. You need to look at something and invite yourself. If something is not flowing, why isn't it flowing? And maybe you just need to drink more water and hydrate. And maybe you need to go for a walk. And maybe
Yeah.
you need to have a cold shower.
All very good
Um,
advice. And especially and I want to clarify too, with the stance on AI, because I've been watching a lot of agents and creators debating on it, TikTok, answering a lot of questions. People ask great questions. People need to ask questions. AI as AI used for content creation has a lot of problems. Number one, as far as I understand it, it's not copyrightable because it is pulling from the vast network of the internet, even from places it shouldn't be pulling, right? Stealing from other writers and creators. And so legal,
it's data scrubbing.
okay. So legally, you can't claim it as your own, right? Like it's not your creation. Secondly, there's an environmental impact. So it's not just happening in the cloud. They have to have lots of servers, as I understand it. I remember taking a class to learn more about this. There's a lot of, they have to make a lot of servers. And so what they are projecting is that AI capabilities are going to get exponentially larger in the next coming of years, but it's because they have to create bigger servers for it. And so what does that do, right? That's an impact on our environment, on our planet. And so there's just a lot of issues and concerns about it. And one agent made the point of saying, if you can't even be bothered to write it yourself, why should we be bothered to read it? Yeah, I just wanted to revisit this ethically, AI content generation, especially in the context of writing books, is very problematic. But I kind of wanted to address it from an authenticity. Like, could you even consider it an authentic?
I I have author friends that I know that wrote something using AI, and the thing is that they were having a conversation with the AI chat, and they're writing their questions and their conversations, etc. But they're exploring the dynamic of having a conversation with a computer.
Hmm.
So in that sense, that's a way that you actually used AI in an authentic way. And it's weird. And the thing is that some of the answers that they were getting, it's like, dude, that's like something like a friend of mine from sixth grade would have said. And when you enter the human factor, when you enter more human factor than the artificial intelligence factor, that's when you're going to hit on more authentic things. Um, having a conversation with a spam bot, try to imagine that.
I've never
It's,
tried that. That
but
seems
you
scary to me.
could, no, but you could,
Guess
and
those we could try it.
or
For the
different.
sake of this podcast, we should just do the
No,
research, I suppose.
no, you can do all of that, and you can approach it in an authentic way. Again, the people that just use prompts to generate text, etc., I think that they're robbing themselves from something that means so much to me and that has been healing and cathartic, and as is a big part of who I am.
Hmm.
It's like, okay, so instead of doing the thing, you want to have a conversation with Google?
Yeah. Yeah.
Man, I don't know. To me, it's lame.
All right. I'm looking at my questions here. What happens if a writer incorporates characters in their world that does not directly share the author's experience, but drives the plot?
I've included characters that are female. I am not female. I've
Mhm.
included characters that are black. I am not black. I've included characters that are Asian. I am not Asian. But I do know black, female, and Asian people. And if you don't operate off a cliche or a stereotype and you treat it as a proper character, I'm not treating it as an Asian character. Juno is a character. Juno is he was one of the werefoxes from Japan. And in part, I was able to inflict a little bit of my relationship with one of my best friends. His name is Andrew. His family is from Taiwan. So Taiwan and Japan is not the same thing. So I'm not operating based off authenticity. If I was doing historical fiction or historical fantasy or something like that, that's when it gets really, really complicated, really, really challenging. When you have a character where if you can change their skin, it makes no difference, then why the hell are they Asian or black or whatever? Are you ticking a box and do you want to make do you want to make a point for X or Y reason? For me, it was important to have though that Asian faction of Therians, which are shapeshifters. Don't call them werewolves; they will get offended. Um, because there are several things from that culture that I find interesting, and I wanted to explore it in a way that it's not that I am an expert or anything, because I'm never trying to do that flex, but it's I wanted to highlight a character from there with certain things, give them their own authentic voice without, oh, he talks like this. And it's like, no, I know Asian people that don't talk like that. I know you. You don't speak.
I do not
You
talk
don't
like
speak
that.
that. You don't talk like that. I know people that have accents in different languages, and I wanted to include that again as a nod to my friend and as a nod to that culture and as an invitation to people to look beyond the typical things. And also, one of my favorite foods is sushi, and I wanted to include a scene where basically there was a raw bar, but there wasn't any fish. There were humans, and it wasn't just self-serving for that. I'm also a huge fan. My favorite movie of all time is Big Trouble in Little China, and again, I've mentioned that Andrew's from Taiwan. I've mentioned China, and these characters are based in Japan. So I did my due diligence, and I tried to do some research. But again, it's not me trying to create the most authentic Japanese character that I can, but to create the most authentic character that I can. That they do have traits, yes. That they do have certain things and preferences, yes. And this comes from conversations. If you have conversations from people across the world, they're going to mention something that sticks out, and they go like, you know what, I prefer this to that because of that. Exploring what a Japanese breakfast is like, it's very different from brunch in Atlanta
Hmm.
and waffles and pancakes. Um, and it does make you go like, huh. And I do have some friends that are obsessed with Japanese culture. And the thing is that some of these people are either Puerto Rican or Argentinian. So that might be what I was trying to flex. And I wanted to write something that they would enjoy, because these people speak Japanese fluently. One of my friends, he was married to a Japanese lass. She was very lovely, super beautiful. They met because he played flamenco guitar and she danced flamenco. What in the hell?
That's nice. What a cool
And
like cross of cultures.
and and having lunch with them, having seeing him correct her Japanese, I was like, what? And again, these are characters from my life, so I want the characters in my book to feel real. I don't need them to feel Japanese real. I don't need them to feel this type of real, but I also do my best to avoid the cliches. There's a book that I'm struggling to read because every time that I read a Latino character, it's like, hey papi,
Oh,
and I just roll my eyes. And of course, the character who's Latino has a brother who was a gangbanger that got shot, and then his girlfriend is also all the cliches that you can, all the negative stereotypes that you can think of Latinos. That, and I'm like,
you're
dude.
like, thanks, thanks.
And for me, when I write characters like that, I just wanted to give that weight. There's in the human cycle, there's a black character who's an angel, and his name is Ama. And the closest comparison that I can give you in terms of his tone sometimes is Morpheus from The Matrix.
Okay.
Is Morpheus from The Matrix the blackest character you've ever seen? No, but Lawrence Fishburne has his moments where you go like, man, that is so suave that only Lawrence Fishburne expressing his personality, his identity, his culture, etc., in the context of Morpheus could have achieved that. And I'm like, I needed to feel real. And every time that I write Ama, it's like, damn, it's so cool to write this guy because I've met people that you go like, every single movement from this guy is suave, dude. It's like you're not making it fair for any other guy in the dance club.
Yeah. So pulling back then, looking at authenticity collectively, is authenticity required for a piece of work to be good?
No.
Okay.
No, and if you read Sin City by Frank Miller or you enjoy anything by Frank Miller, who is a great writer and he's a great comic writer, he's not an authentic guy. And this is what people tell me from any panel that he's been on. And it's like, what inspired you to write this storyline? He's like, the paycheck.
Wow. Okay. I didn't know that.
That's a rough answer to process as a fan. And again, it's not one person that's told me this, it's several people. But because that's his personality or that's his answer, does that take away from the value of his work? No. Read Sin City and tell me it's not quality noir work. You
Mhm.
can't. Objectively speaking, you see it and you go like, damn, that's good. That's really good. And there are people that aren't necessary. Is Dan Brown authentic? He's methodical
Mhm.
and
Yes.
he's extremely effective, and he has found his niche, he has found his style, and he has found his voice. He's authentic in his voice, and he's authentic is in his research. But as in terms of what he's putting out, is angels and demons part of his DNA? Do you think that's something that means something truly personal to him? I don't know. It's something. It's an idea that he got when he went to Italy, and the thing is that he explores his surroundings, makes a narrative, and then he does choose your own adventure. So he drafts about 8 or 9 endings for some of his novels, and he sees what fits best. And he's exploring different things.
Yeah.
And some people might say that's not authentic because he's trying to land on the best ending. And I'm like, why is that not authentic, etc. And you can get into these conversations because you ask, okay, Robert Landing is his archetype, and it's always the same story, etc. But it's always fun. And but I'm saying that he's not going to say Robert Landing is inspired by my father because I remember when I was, I don't, maybe he is, but I think that it was inspired by someone that he knows, but he just wanted to write something fun.
Yeah.
And his definition of authenticity is writing something that's fun. R.L. Stein writes something
Oh, they're so fun. I love R.L. Stein, but he
uh,
churns them out very methodically, just like,
and the quality varies drastically. So
Yeah.
is okay. How many Goosebumps books are there? Like 200 or something. Are all of them authentic? Are all of them his best work? Are all of them him flexing to the maximum of his ability? Or how often is he hitting a deadline? Because people
Mhm.
forget that you have to hit a deadline. And if writing is your business and writing if your is your livelihood,
Yeah.
authenticity sometimes has to take a back seat and you have to get stuff done.
Yeah. Well, JD, thank you so much for showing your experience, clearly your expertise, especially with all the books you've written, and your insights into authentic writing. We're coming up on time, so I wanted
Uh,
to, before we have to go, do you have any final remarks that you'd like to share?
this was fun. We could have a 2 hour podcast. You are fantastic. And I've seen some of your recent shows. This has been great. And every time that I'm able to have a conversation with someone that we touch on something different, to me it's super fun. And it's just fun to connect with other creative people. So thank you for this
Yeah,
opportunity.
thank you. And listeners, thanks so much for checking in with us this week. There'll be another episode next week, and I'll talk to you all later. Bye.